The good news here is, although this is from 2016 and it's approaching 4 years now, Prizzy did state we are definitely looking into giving overperforming, underperforming nano powers a slight adjustment. So I'm kind of worried that overperforming nanos such as Leech will get a nerf, but that's all right. Specifically, we've heard many complaints about Sleep, Radar, Snare, Treasure Hunter, and Recall all being underutilized. So it definitely the developers have definitely looked and talked about this into consideration. Okay, so this was posted today, or today, at the time of this recording. It won't be today in the distant future, but today is today. Devin stated, changing up Treasure Finder to actually increase the chance of getting crates would be a really smart change, in my opinion. Emphasis in his opinion, because that's what he probably wants to happen, but we don't know what the rest of the FusionFall team collectively want to happen, and would open up a couple of basically unused nanos to get some use. Someday down the line, you may see this change. So this thread, Luck Nano, and it's basically, uh, if not a brand new ability, it would be interesting if the ability Treasure Hunter can actually be buffed, or something that can radically change the surface of the Fusion Fall grinding community. Um, so this person right here, Thick Thighs Tony, I love the alliteration right here. He's suggesting that we should increase the drop rate. So he says right here, the current drop rate is 33%. It's actually 33.33, repeating because it's a 1 in 3 chance. And maybe buff that up to maybe 40% for the nano. Okay. Now the super duper odds are 5% currently, so an increment to 6% is more than reasonable. He gives us some more statistics here, but I think what needs to happen, if there is like a 1 in 3 chance of a crate being dropped, so for every 3 monsters, statistically speaking, you will get yourself a crate, and therefore every 150 monsters, statistically speaking, you will get a full inventory of variety crates. He's suggesting, instead of making it a 1 out of 3, you should actually instead make it a 2 in 5 chance for that to happen, because a 40 out of 100, if you simplify that, it's a 2 in 5 chance. I did some other mathematics here. Now I know math can scare people away, but so you can read this on your own time. But like if they just do a flat increase from a 1 in 3 to a 2 in 5, it's not a significant boost, but it is a small yet noticeable boost. So for example, I don't know, if my math is correct, let's just say that it would take you like 15 minutes to get yourself 50 variety crates. Now with the boosted nano ability, with a buffed up treasure hunter ability, instead of 15 minutes, maybe it's now just 12 minutes or 13 minutes. And if that were to actually appear inside of the game, that would really shake things up. Because if that were to happen, then I would replace Drain or Stun and only have Leech, Treasure Hunter, and Heal whenever it comes to grinding, and most especially whenever there's a whole bunch of gold exclusive items that are dropped for like future updates. And to be honest, like I kind of feel like gold exclusives, like the rarity of that needs to be changed. So we have ourselves common, uncommon, rare, ultra rare. For those gold exclusives, the rarity should be in its own class because it's only dropped by gold crates, right? And maybe I was thinking about legendary rarity or probably mythic rarity. So items such as, like, for example, the Solomon hat, Rodney, and the recent Ami Yumi Gangrene, um, as well as the pizza party, as well as the bandito hat, would all belong to that mythic, legendary rarity. Probably a potential video along down the way. But anyways, it says right here that Devin is open to the idea of actually changing the power of Treasure Hunter. Now, what what nanos have them? So if I were to press the letter N on my keyboard, the three nanos would have to be blue, right here, as well as, you know, double D, as well as Mandy. Now for Mandy, her abilities are actually all pretty good. She has herself a group run, which is very useful when it comes to grinding in groups inside of infected zones. Recall self, which has a minor, very niche ability for racing, but then again, most people don't really race, unfortunately. And you know, if this were to happen, then Mandy would instantly become a very useful nano. Now, if we look over into blue, he has stun cone, which is a moderately useful grinding nano, but then again, we have ourselves stun area, which Coco Adaptium has. And we have the very useless snare. Now, the title of this video is obviously not just dedicated for Treasure Finder, and apparently it's not Treasure Hunter, it's Treasure Finder. But if this were to actually happen, then obviously blue would become a very mandatory nano, instead of stun cone, which no one really uses, to be honest, because there's far better alternatives such as stun area. Then Finder's Keepers would definitely be useful, and most importantly, double D would actually would be even more useful. Again, you know, I have recall on this nano. You know, again, it has a very niche role. If you race often and if you want to have a high score for particular infected zones, then recall is something that you would definitely use. But again, if double D or if blue or if Mandy were to actually have that as an ability, so instead of like looking for golden eggs or those power-up abilities, which honestly no one really cares about, because you know those golden eggs, right? You know those golden eggs? Let's see, let's go into the universal guide. The link is inside of the description. It's already been documented, so it's gonna take a while because I have a whole bunch of tabs open up right now. Where is it? The rest of the guide. Mysterious vendor and golden egg sets. You know, they've all been documented. You know, these are all of the mysterious golden egg sets, and fortunately my dear friend Mr. Junior has, you know, actually documented them. So like, what's the purpose of treasure finder or treasure hunter, you know? And this kind of, you know, kind of deserves its own mini video as well. I remember making a thread about this, which unfortunately kind of got ignored, but I think the developers are seriously lacking a huge hole in potential here. So you know how we have 4 sets that you can obtain looking by doing a golden egg hunt. Why not actually add in more sets? You know, like let's just say every update or every other update, they just add in a new set, and people can actually go treasure hunting for them. And this is good for content creators as well, because people like me can actually make videos about that, and obviously those are easy views, you know. But yeah, like there's no particular use for where the heck is oh, it's right here. Yeah, so there's no particular use for the ability treasure finder, and I'm sorry if I keep on saying treasure hunter. Like inside of my head, I always thought it was treasure hunter, not treasure finder. Um, Now, there are some other abilities that I want to go talk about, and it's not just particularly this, but let me just finalize uh, this topic. Now, I have a whole bunch of tabs open here, and that's for a very good reason. It's because what I did was, I looked on, I spent a good 30 plus minutes of my time on the forums trying to search for relevant threads on how to make these relatively or arguably worthless, useless powers into something that can actually be useful for the community. Now, obviously, we've already talked about treasure finder, not hunter. We already talked about treasure finder. We're going to talk about radar. We're going to talk about freedom. I already wrote that over there. We're going to talk about damage, sleep, and snare. Sleep and snare, they're arguably the most useless powers inside of the game, as well as guard, freedom, and antidote. So now, are they useless? I think a much more better definition for them is how frequently will you use these nanos relative to other nanos? Because I've made a guide right here. Oh, it looks like there's two people using it right now. I made a guide right here. This is a nice, very helpful plug because I've spent many hours writing about this, and it's basically a guide detailing what nano powers you need to use. And for the overwhelmingly vast majority of these choices, the answers would have to be for grinding nanos. It would have to be drain, leech, as well as stun. For leveling up, it would be running, scavenge, healing, as well as for racing, again, running, jumping, rocket, and recall. And there's a sort of inequality in terms of powers. Obviously, because like when you reach the post game, when you level 36, there's honestly not much you can do. You can do the guide missions from all 4 guides, but honestly, it's best for you to go save those missions because the expansion is going to come up many months from now. So hello to me or someone watching this in the future. Let me know how the expansion is. But there's a overwhelmingly there's a bias towards certain powers, and there's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the powers that are chosen comes from 20% of the actual abilities being offered. So let's just say I don't know how many abilities there are, but let's just say there's 20, right? Then out of the 20 abilities, then only just 4. Maybe there's not 20. Maybe I also don't know, but maybe there's only 6 abilities that account for 80% of the options, right? So what I want to do is I first want to just talk about how can we improve these abilities. So guard, freedom, antidote, sleep, snare, damage, radar, and treasure finder. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look through these threads, and we're going to start off with this. Now, this individual's name is Hackertum765. I hope I pronounced him correctly. And I've seen this individual several times on the forums. I'll just call him Hacker. And what I like about him is, as you can see here, he says Ed is the best nano. And, for someone that plays the game, for someone that actually completed the game, at least from levels 1 to 36, you can know for a fact that Ed is arguably not the best nano. He's arguably at the bottom or bottom 5 of most useful nanos. So this is going to take quite a while for me to read, but what he does is that he actually gives a neutral perspective on why these low usage rate nano abilities can actually be useful under certain conditions. So he first starts off with freedom, and this one is protects a user from CC. I'm not sure what that means. Stun being the only one monsters have. Yeah. So if you were to have freedom, good old freedom, which Nano has freedom. And in fact, actually, I don't even think I have a Nano ability that has freedom. So, um, yeah, I don't have one with freedom, unfortunately. So I can't really showcase it. But so yeah, if a monster has stun, or if like a monster has leech, or if a monster, yeah, but yeah, I think it's only works on stun. Um, so like towards the late game, once you're inside of Darklands, some of the monsters start having the ability stun, and probably some of them have that ability when you're in downtown or in the wilds. They just start having stun, and so if you're to have freedom, if they were to stun you, you won't get affected. Now the problem with this is that um, you have much better options instead of freedom, because particularly if you're grinding, then your best options would have to be leech by far, because it gives you damage as well as some health back. Another option would be drain area, which is ironically does more damage than damage itself, as well as stun area. Now stun, which is what's interesting about stun, is that it's pretty much the combination of sleep and snare, as well as something extra. Now stun, what it does is that it's actually very, no, it's actually underappreciated. I wouldn't say undervalued or underrated, but I think it's definitely underappreciated, because what stun does is that you could use it on a group of three, and what it does is that you can attack the monster minimum 3 times, and it won't attack you back. If it uses an eruption attack, then that eruption attack is momentarily paused, and you can go somewhere to go avoid it. And obviously, when they're stunned, they can't use stun back, or like they can't use leech on you, right? Or they can't use battery drain on you, or they can't use that corruption attack on you. And another useful thing about stun um, is that particularly when you are inside of a high leveled area, such as, for example, Fuse's Lair, Green Maw, the Precipice, you're going to be grinding a lot, trying to go collect those 7 legendary sets, right? The problem is like there's chances when you're going to be grinding monsters that come in groups of 3, and sometimes you're not paying attention, because like you're too busy enjoying that song on Spotify, and you're gonna get like ambushed. So if you were to use stun area on, so you're gonna get ambushed. So like a quarter, like half of your health is gone. Bam! You take out stun area. All of them are paused. You can take out your heal at the same time dealing damage to the monsters with your leech nano, and then by the time that they're done, by the time they're no longer stunned, you can take out your heal nano again, and you can lock on to another stun. And so basically that ambush, which like half of the time you would die from, you would actually have a fighting chance to survive. So definitely stun area is a very underutilized grinding power, which is relevant to this video, because some people think that stun is worthless, that drain area and leech overshadow it, but the reality is that in terms of nano abilities, for grinding, leech is number 1. Second place would have to be somewhat of a tie between drain as well as stun, and after that, damage, it's just a distant third, which is very ironic. So yeah, freedom it's not useful because there's other nano abilities such as leech and drain and stun that can that can give you much better benefit. Now, like when it comes to guard, this is another thing that kind of also struggles as well. It's for similar reasons such as freedom. Now, guard protects the user from being drained of their potions and boosts. So guard, you could say, is a quality of life ability since you won't have to go to shops to use taros to refill on potions because of monsters draining them. However, most monsters that have battery drain ability are high level enemies, so expect to use this in the late game. So again, this is another problem, right? Like similar with freedom, there's much better powers that can be used to replace it, which is obviously again like heal, leech, stun, drain. And the problem with this is that if a monster were to actually use battery drain on you, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take out a lot at all. In fact, you can go grind a group of monsters that that come in groups of three that are plentiful and that have battery drain as their ability, and you come there with like 9,999 potions and 9,999 weapon boosts. Especially the weapon boosts, you're not gonna really see a noticeable decrease in the amount um, of boosts you're using. It's very little, and in fact, ironically enough, I think the developers should actually buff the amount of potions and weapon boosts these monsters take out of you. Now there is a special situation for this, and it would definitely have to be the Mega Fusion Echo Echo when you're at that final phase where it goes from one, then it splits into two, and then the third phase, I don't know how much it splits down to. You eventually have like six or more. You know, that's when guard can actually be useful. But even then, even in that very specific niche case, you're actually still better off with using stun, heal, and probably revive. So that's the problem. Freedom and guard, there's better powers to go replace it. Now, recall. Now, as you can see here, this was posted on September 10, 2018, and this was long before racing, Infected Zone Racing, actually came out. But let's just read what hacker actually stated here. So, teleports the user to a registered point in the infected zone. So this also applies for group members too, if using the group variation. So that's actually under number 2, recall group. It's a very bizarre. It's a very bizarre ability. I think something that would be much more useful instead of group recall. I think this was inspired by the 2019 Halloween event. How about instead of a group recall, you actually give us group bonus, right? Because I remember during the 2019 Halloween event, there were so many pumpkins, and there was a lot of people being in groups grinding taros, and you would be the MVP if you actually would bring a group taros nano where everyone can get 20% or 24% more taros if the gumball was added. Now, it says right here, it synergizes well with Antidote for exploration purposes or time-saving purposes. So recall is really good when it comes to platforming in the large infected zone. So for example, nuclear plant, green mall. If you ever fall off or you aren't too good at platforming, this can easily save you loads of time and frustration. You can also use it to troll your group members by boarding them with you. Yeah, that's something that I also thought of as well. Let's just say that you're finally out the dark tree, right? You're about to go leave the infected zone, then bam, you just use recall group and you're back at that spot. Oh, the pain. But you can always just change character and then you're outside of the infected zone. So yeah, so I can't really argue too much with this because it's actually a decent power. However, what I can criticize it for is actually not really a true criticism. It's just the fact that the community doesn't really do a lot of infected zone racing. Um, and even if you are part of the minority people who actually do race, unless you're like someone such as Cherry Lime, who is like a god at racing, when it comes to racing, all you need is run, jump, and rocket. Recall is only really useful for if you want to get yourself all-time scores or if you want to significantly improve um, your racing time so you can get those crates as fast as possible. So I really don't have much complaints here because recall does have its use. So yeah, so let's move on to the next thing right here, which is antidote, and this is something that I kind of want to go bring up later after I'm done talking about antidote. So it protects the user from toxic fusion matter pools or ground. It synergizes well with recall for exploration purposes or time saving purposes. So if you ever have a mission requiring you to acquire an item inside of an infected zone that isn't in the sky, and there's a lot of toxic fusion matter in the way, you can easily skip all that platforming, walking straight to the objective without worrying of dying, or you can explore infected zones without having to worry about dying from fusion matter. So it's a good thing that Hacker actually mentioned, Leaky Lake, and let's just go there. Well, I'm not going to physically go there, but as you can see here, this right here is the entrance, right? And I remember there's a task right here where you have to, uh, you have to click on something. Now the thing is, I mean, you could use antidote, right, to get that done. However, heal, especially gumball heal, can actually get the job just as well, and you don't have to change your nanos while you're leveling up. The same thing can be applied like when you're inside of Fuse's lair, when you're inside of um, Fuse's hall, Fuse's labyrinth, Fuse's throne, Fuse's apparently now back door, where there's a whole bunch of fusion matter around the floor. Again, you don't really need to use that. All you honestly need would have to be your very trusty dandy, a Nano you'll carry with you from levels 3 to 36 and beyond in the post game, would have to be your Eddie Nano, your Jawbreaker Break. So Antidote is kind of not really useful even for the final, or now second final mission, Fuse No More Part 404. You don't really need that. So next thing right here. So this is kind of long, but it's actually good because although there's a whole bunch of like tabs open here, a lot of them I'm going to just very quickly go through, right? So, and I really do have to appreciate Hacker for taking the time of being neutral with this, and you can definitely tell he spent a lot of time and effort to try and make these less popular nano abilities under a different light appear to be a lot more useful under very niche circumstances. Okay, so yeah, Treasure Finder. Wow. Okay, so yeah, we already talked about Treasure Finder, and I suggested to the community many months ago, repeatedly, that Treasure Finder, Treasure Hunter should just dramatically be changed. And it says right here, it allows the user to see the location of cocoa eggs on the mini map and nanocom. And my response is, like, if you're looking for those golden egg sets, well, the reality is people have already documented them, and they don't, like, they're just stuck in one spot. It's not necessary for that. Like, you can just go on YouTube and type in FusionFall golden egg locations, and you'll be able to go find it. So, applications in exploring impossible replacement to passive buff powers. So, Treasure Finder is extremely useful in the early game for locating sneaky egg locations, or if you don't want to use other buff-based powers, such as, for example, Freedom and Guard, which, have their own problems as well. So essentially, you can treat Treasure Finder as a slot machine when getting buffs. If you want to have almost every passive buff-based nano power in one, Treasure Finder is the way to go. Yes, it will be inconsistent when it comes to what buffs you get, but it's more like a jack of all trades power. So if you're ever bored or want to have multiple buffs at once, try out Treasure Finder. I don't think he explained this very well. What do you mean by slot machine when getting buffs? If you want to have okay, so now, all right, now this is the part where, oh, did I skip radar? Okay, so before I continue talking, I'm going to talk about radar. So this one right here shows the location of enemies on your minimap Nanocom. Again, this has small usefulness, very, very small, but it can be improved. So possible applications in grinding or fusion layers. Radar can be used in grinding by allowing you to see specific enemy locations, or making an analysis of an area by seeing how close enemies are and how many are there to see if it's effective. Yes, it has uses in fusion layers. It's more of a fun role-playing usage. So yeah, not really. So he says right here, later on, some fusion layers become maze-like, so it can be somewhat tricky to navigate with the help of radar. So this is something that I would kind of disagree. Yes, I do agree that there are a minority of fusion layers where it becomes difficult to navigate, even for people who've gone through the game several times, more than 4 times. You can sometimes get lost. However, there is a big brain move where if you bring jump and if you're to bring rocket, you can actually skip the vast majority of the layer and head straight to the fusion. So that's not needed. And even if you did not know that, you can bring in, for example, like Magus, XLR, or Swampfire, which have stealth that can allow you to evade these enemies. And in fact, let's just say that you do get caught. Well, that's problematic, because now you have to go fight them. And if you do fight them, fortunately, hopefully, if you're wearing armor that's strong enough, you can fight them. Okay, so now let's just talk about this potential suggestion that I have that the FusionFall devs, and particularly the FusionFall legacy developers, can do with these abilities. So the possibility of them actually doing this is very unlikely, but I still think this is a good idea. So you see right here, right, Freedom, Guard, as well as Antidote. So I think what needs to happen is that they need to just combine all 3 of them. So if they do that, you combine Freedom, Guard, and Antidote. So if you do that, then when you take out that ability, you are immune from toxic fusion matter, you are immune from battery drain, and you are also immune from a monster's ability, such as stun. Now, would it be considered meta? No, but would it be considered like 3 times much more useful? Would the sum of its parts be much more useful? Heck yeah, absolutely. Now, a con here is that if they actually do take away 3 abilities and merge it into one, then what can those other abilities be? Well, the good news is that they can actually replace those worthless abilities with something else, such as, I don't know, like gliding or dashing. Because, like, imagine dashing as an actual nano ability, right? Because, like, when that came out, it definitely redefined the racing meta for the original, FusionFall. Let me see if I'm still here. For the original FusionFall. Now it won't be meta, but what they can do for Freedom is, ironically, they have to give monsters the ability to use stun much more often, or as well as the ability, or as well as other, or or for monsters to not just have stun, but a wide variety of other abilities, such as, you know, leech. You know, world bosses have that, such as, you know, the Shipwrecker, but it's not used as often. You know, with guard, they have like the if a monster were to use battery drain on you, it needs to be buffed, so where it can actually affect the user. And with antidote, you know, that would be great as well. But if they can't combine all three, at least combine freedom and guard, for goodness sakes. Like, come on. Like, they even have like the same little animation, like, of a white sphere surrounding you. You know. Now the reason why that's very unlikely is, again, they're going to have to like dramatically redesign and rethink um, how like what kind of powers these nanos are going to have, right? And the potential challenges of how the heck do we combine these three powers to begin with. Now in the in the possibility that, you know, Treasure Finder will never have a significant makeover, right? Similar to combining Freedom Guard as well as Antidote, I think what they can do is for themselves to make something that is like a 1 out of 5 in terms of usefulness and transform it into like a 2 out of 5 in terms of usefulness. So you just combine Radar and Treasure Finder. So you activate the Nano ability. It shows you where the monsters are, as well as, oh, it's becoming much more sunny outside, as well as showing you potential egg locations, as well as, you know, and I don't know. Yeah, just combine the two. Again, that's possibility of that happening is very unlikely, but I don't know. I mean, they managed to make this remake this game from scratch, as well as creating brand new nanos from scratch, such as, for example, Computress, as well as Runty, and Belladonna. Now, so we have ourselves Revive Self and Revive Group. Now, this is something that I would kind of disagree on. I mean, in terms of usefulness, like if I were to give them from a scale of 1 to 5, if 1 is like Snare and Sleep, then Revive is like a 3 out of 5, if not a 3.5 out of 5, or like a 7 out of 10 in terms of usefulness. It has its use. So it has, again, similar to Recall, it has a very niche use, but, you know, it's still useful, you know, because when you use it, you're going to use it often. So, so when equipped, the user will be revived with half health at their current location instead of a Resurrectum, possible replacement for healing-based powers. So Revive is a pretty cool ability for people who want to run and gun. You'll never have to worry about your health ever again, sort of. So, for example, so if you're grinding, you can help keep running around killing monsters without worrying about your health, since you revive at your location. Now, this is something that I disagree with, because if you were to revive at a spot and the monsters are still there, they're going to continue ambushing you, and now you're dead twice, and you don't have a revive nano. But what does happen with revive is it actually has a very useful glitching ability. I have a video about it, and basically, if you were to die on fusion matter, and you were to take out your revive nano, then you can actually, when you revive, you won't get hurt by the fusion matter anymore. You're totally immune to it. It's a very nice and interesting glitch. I have a video for it. I just have like a pop-up appear right about now, as well as inside of the video description and comments. But where can you find its niche ability? And the answer to that would have to be world bosses. So if you are like with a group of friends, or if you are alone because you have no friends, well, you can just like, and you're about to die, then you can take off your revive ability, and you can have another chance to go and kill that monster again. Now, unfortunately, like I said earlier, if you are alone and you were to die and hit revive, that monster's health is going to go back to normal because it's going to think you're gone and just go on its own business. Now, however, if you do have friends, or if you're lucky enough to have found a group of people that's willing to go tolerate you, um, then if you're to use revive, then obviously you give your group another fighting chance that you will be able to go survive. Now, this is useful obviously for world bosses. So, for example, Reed's Roadkiller at Habitat Homes, the Shipwrecker boss most especially, as well as the Dark Horntail most especially. There's like 5 of them, level 40 Adaptium, as well as future world bosses, such as Mega Fusion Echo Echo, especially in the 3rd phase where there's like 6 of them, I think, all about to go attack you. Revive is very useful there, and the final usage that I can think of would have to be when you're battling Lord Fuse, and he has that one-hit KO attack on you, and that white light, you can take off your revive nano, and you're gonna die because it's obviously a one-hit KO, but you don't have to go back at the start of the lair and kill those Doomstriders, and then eventually be killed again, and then you got to do that again. But revive is useful. It's a very useful ability. It's useful when killing world bosses, as well as its own glitchiness, that you can be immune to fusion matter when you die, and it also works when you're swimming on fusion matter as well. So I wouldn't call this useless. Maybe if, for example, like there were no world bosses, then it would be useless, or you would use it less. But even then, let's just assume that there are no world bosses, right? Like, it would be inferior to a healing nano, right? So you would have leech, you would have healing, and you would have like your stun or your drain nano. With that combination, you're very rarely going to go die unless you're just like goofing around and not paying attention. Then possibly, yeah, revive could serve as a inferior example, but I know there are other combinations, such as, for example, leech, revive, and heal. That's like what I would bring. Like, for example, if I'm battling a world boss, such as, well, that's not a world boss, such as Lord Fuse, I would bring in Mojo Jojo Drain Point, Demongo Self Heal, as well as Eddie Self Heal, Demongo Self Revive, and Revive Group. So this one's kind of like an inferior group heal, but group heal has its own problems as well, unless you personally like being a healer. Because at least in my opinion, like when you have group heal, you're constantly paying attention to your group's health, and not enough attention when it comes to actually defeating the monsters, most especially during world bosses. But it is helpful, but the thing is, you can only really use it once, I believe, unless you have a gumball. I think I've yet to go confirm that. But that interesting fusion matter glitch, right? It also does work with the revive group. Now here we have ourselves snare, and we have ourselves slows down enemies. So great synergy with long range weapons such as rockets, rifles, and shatter guns, as well as run. Snare is really useful when it comes to long range combat, meaning it's pretty good versus melee monsters and possibly ranged monsters when using a rifle. Wait, there's a thing called melee monsters and ranged monsters? I don't think they exist. But even then, long range combat? Are you talking about rockets? Because that itself has its own fair share of problems, such as actually not having the ability to lock onto enemies and having a having a slower rate of fire compared to rifles and shatter guns. And the problem with rifles is that although like pistols and rifles have like the same exact stats, so if you have a kosher rifle or the red rifle, level 36 ultra rare, as well as the wrist rockets, level 36 ultra rare, despite having the same stat, you would get the wrist rockets more than the red rifle because of a higher DPS, diamonds per second. For every second that passes by, you can actually shoot more than with the rifle. And that extra range with the rifle, the problem is it doesn't do anything at all because even at a very long range, the monsters can still attack you. So it's more of an as a aesthetic kind of thing. And sleep. All variations put enemies to sleep, which when you wake them up, it synergizes well with run and can be used as a getaway. Oh wow, this video is 48 minutes long. Wow. Well, how am I gonna make this into a short video? Restricts enemies from being able to attack or move, synergizes well with, well, everything, I guess. I know it's somewhat popular, but from what I've seen... Oh, I'm sorry. Sleep, I would call a fun ability or an escape ability. It's kind of like, you know, repel in Pokemon, but problem there is... It's just a very... It's just a shitty stun, to be honest. It just puts your enemies to sleep, but the moment you attack them, they're now awake, and it's basically a repel or some sort of like escape rope. You can't really do anything with it, so it's just a very bad stun. Now here we have ourselves stunned, and Ian already talked about the usefulness of stun, and again here we have ourselves bonus provides 20% more taros from missions and monsters. So grinding applications, this is popular among grinders, but it seems like scavenge is valued more. So when you are grinding monsters, and let's just say you're level 36, you are capped on the fusion matter meter, and you're grinding low level monsters such as like level 20s, right? Then you can probably use bonus. Or let's just say there's an event coming by, right? Or there's a brand new mission. Then that's when you can use bonus. Or let's just say, for example, in the 2019 Halloween event, right, where it gave you 100,000 taros for killing 3,000 pumpkin spawns. Then if you were to use bonus, you would get yourself 20% or 24% more taros. So it definitely has some usefulness here. But from the list that Hacker gave, the most useful ones would have to be recall, which is niche, revive, which is also a very niche thing. It's useful for road bosses, and stun is by far the most useful one here by far. I don't even know why it's here. And bonus. So number one is stun is the most useful by far. Bonus number two. Recall and revive. No, I'm sorry. I would place stun first by far. I would place stun first, then revive, then bonus, then recall as the four useful powers here. But everything else, man, they all just suck. Like there's just no other way to like sugarcoat this. But I'm really glad that Hacker actually put down these arguments right here. So I've been recording now for 51 minutes. Well, I only thought 20 minutes was actually past, but hey, I'm in your server. I'm recording. Okay, it's best for me to not say anything because we're definitely looking. So this one right here, this is from 2016, and so this person, Ness Matar, I'm not sure how to pronounce, but I'm just gonna call you Ness. And this person right here is suggesting how can we buff sleep. Now the majority of these threads here, I'm gonna quickly go through them. So the idea was that sleep becomes more of a support power to differentiate it from stun. Using most of the other nano powers on an enemy that's been put to sleep will double its effectiveness, or at least increase it. So okay, Oh yeah, that definitely does make a lot more sense. Damage deals more damage to a sleeping target. Yeah, of course. Stun will lock them down for twice as long, etc. Same old, still applies to sleep. Otherwise, as soon as the bonus effect is applied, the target will wake up, and whilst fusions are still resistant to these sorts of nano powers. So yeah, I definitely do agree with that. That it just acts as an ability for you to just stack, for you to just go stack it, and perhaps you can combine sleep and snare, combine those two, and as well as actually being a stacking or a support power. That would be really great. So let's copy this. And the good news here is, although this is from 2016 and it's approaching 4 years now, Prizzy did state, we are definitely looking into giving overperforming, underperforming nano powers a slight adjustment. So I'm kind of worried that overperforming nanos such as Leech will get a nerf, but that's alright. Specifically, we've heard many complaints about Sleep, Radar, Snare, Treasure Hunter, and Recall all being underutilized. So it definitely, the developers have definitely looked and talked about this into consideration. Here I am just, searching for like these relevant threads right here. So this guy right here, he has a grand combat overhaul, but something that I want to go just primarily emphasize on would have to be how this guy manages to improve these abilities. So we look right here, Snare, it slows down the enemies, reducing their attack and movement speed. So let's just say, I don't know how fast they attack, but let's just say, like, for every 1 minute, the monster attacks you 10 times. So if you're to use Snare, the monster now attacks you 5 times, right? You just basically have their movement as well as their attack speed. I mean, they're already pretty simple as well, but that's definitely some sort of improvement. These one right here, these are not real, but let's see, where is, yeah, Snare. Does he have Sleep? No, he doesn't have Sleep. So again, this is all some minor ways to improve them. And here's Hacker explaining how it can be useful, and I already tried to discredit what he's saying right here. Okay, make radar useful. Yeah, and it says right here, either combining radar with treasure finder or increasing its range, either to 3/4 of the map or the entire map. So yeah, I can definitely see that. But then again, maybe how on your nanocom on the top right, if you were to take out radar, it would show you monsters, right? But let's just pretend that Blue has radar as an ability, right? So you open up M, you get a My View. So instead of just your nanocom area, it would actually show you where all of the monsters are located within that particular map region. So that's something that to go think about. So they just combine radar with treasure finder as well as increasing the actual range. Now here's another suggestion on how to actually improve these abilities. So for radar, since it looks like enemies will be able to hide in the environment, you could use radar to make life a little easier on yourself. Also, maybe they could have a special marker for wandering fusions or bosses, though that might make it too useful. So, just to go add on to what Ander stated. So let's just state, like, okay, you have your Blue. Let's just pretend he has radar as a power. You open up your M map, and actually, let's also pretend that we are here at Pokeoaks. No, let's not do that. How about let's just pretend that we are here at Habitat Homes. We have your Blue Nano here, right? And you open up your map. and obviously the Rage Road Killer is here, you open up your radar, and through here you can find where all the monsters are located, but most importantly there will be a special marker to go figure out, to go show you where exactly that world boss, the Rage Road Killer, will be. And if they were to do that, they would be able to, that would make a noticeable improvement, because especially when world bosses are first introduced, people are always wondering, where the heck is it? Or, they're just camping at these spots, right? Radar, show world bosses and it moving around. That would be really great. So when was that idea made? That was in 2017, 20 or 28. So this one right here, this guy is from Baduga, and he's saying right here, how can we improve these nanos? So antidote, it should either last a bit longer when activated or be a passive ability that only absorbs 8% of the damage from fusion matter. This needs to be expanded on a bit more. Freedom should simply be combined with guard. Yes, this is something that I independently thought of, but I'm glad that someone from 2016 has thought about this as well. Radar should be able to detect monsters within 3/4 of the map's radius, up from 1/2, having a larger symbol for boss monsters, as well as sowing cocoa eggs. Yeah, this should be combined, radar and treasure finders. So again, I'm not sure how to exactly showcase this, but I think it's better for me to go show than tell. Like, I think it'd be better, let's just say, if I were to just Photoshop this, right? Show all the monsters here, show the world boss moving around, as well as show the golden eggs inside of that area. Have that stuff combined. So recall points to be made a bit more common in locations that are less out of your way, sort of like checkpoints, to make the power a viable option to take when dealing with infected zones. So this is something that I've personally came up with, by myself, and so I brought this up with Devin personally. The answer is unfortunately no, but I might as well bring it up again because it's an interesting idea. So instead of recall being useful inside of infected zones, maybe you can have recall points scattered around the game outside of infected zones. So for example, you can have a recall point here near the mirror. You can have a recall point near where number 1, Grandpa Max, and the Scotsman are. You can have a recall point where Eddie is located nearby the Great Machine or nearby the Nano Station. You can have another recall point at Grimm. Just basically recall points wherever there's those important NPCs are located. And if you're to click on that recall point, you talk to them, right? And let's just say you go from Orchid Bay, or let's just talk something much more realistic. You get a mission from Off-Road Plaza or Tech Square, and around the mid-20s, right? Yeah, you register your recall point at Tech Square at the middle where this water fountain is, right? Now your task is to go all the way from Tech Square all the way to where the really twisted forest, as well as like Area 51.5, because that's a realistic scenario. Once you're inside of the mid-20s, you're gonna go back and forth between downtown as well as the wild. So you register here, the recall point here, right? And then once you're done doing your task at Area 51.5, you use your recall point, and then bam, you're warped to Tech Square, right? And obviously it has some sort of recharge period, so so it charges a lot slower. Or maybe you can't use a nano potion on it. It just has to slow. It takes like 10 minutes or 5 minutes for it to go fully recharge. So you can't abuse the system. But imagine if you can actually do that, how much easier or how much less of a hassle it would be to go back and forth from Tech Square to really Twisted Forest. It just gets ridiculous when you're inside of like the mid-20s, right? So something to go really think about. Recall, scattered outside of infected zones. So the reason why this does not work is that for some reason the recall points are apparently hard coded inside of are apparently hard coded inside of infected zones, unfortunately. So I mean, like, what is hard coded, right? Like, aren't nanos hard coded? Or like the devs used to say that bank storage and expanded bank storage was something that to never happen, but they managed to do it, right? What is hard coded? So I mean, the answer of them doing that from like a scale of 1 to 5, it's like a 1 out of 5. But you know, don't tell me the odds, right? Like a 1 out of 5, that's still like a 20% chance of it actually happening. So yeah, so this is all really good. Recall, sleep. I'm not really sure about this one. Considering the changes to combat to make it more active and stuff, this may be a bit more useful in not being ganged up on by a ton of monsters and running away. So allowing you to disable them for an extent. So what I liked about this other person is that sleep can actually work as some sort of support. So you use sleep, and then you use stun, or you use damage, and it actually stuns the character longer, or it actually gives more damage to the character, or you use leech and it gives more damage and you get more health back, right? And I think if they were to make sleep like that as a support power, then it would actually make sleep pretty meta, right? It would make sleep meta. So instead of probably having like, if that were to happen, I would have sleep, I would have stun area and heal. There would probably be no more leech nor drain. That's how mental it could potentially be. So this one right here is from 2019. Treasure Finder. But if it raises the chances of finding a crate, and with a gumball eliminates the basic crates, would make it the best ability post game so far. I don't think it eliminating gray crates, but I think if we can transform that 1 out of 3 into, for example, a 3 out of 5 from a 33.33% to a 40%, that would make things a lot more convenient. Radar can give the player the exact fusion monster that has a mission drop. It already does that on your Nanocom. Sleep can be an alternative of stun when sleeping the foe takes more damage but wakes up in 3 to 5 shots. I still like the stacking ability. Snare can bring the foes that hang out in groups together and be hit by a single target weapons and attack more slowly rather than... Yes, I agree with that. That's a very creative idea. So, for example, like, I think of it kind of like a rope, right? You're swinging your rope to like a group of 3. They're all stuck. Here's your 3, right? You bring them together, and then they're now just one entity. So instead of using just your shatter gun, you can now just use your rifle or your pistol, and that would make things a lot easier. So it could be a potential grinding power as well, right? As well as having the ability to so as well as adding that ability. So here's another list of some suggestions right here from Fox Fiend. The thing I know is that in OG FusionFall, damage was much better. I don't think doubling the crate drop rate would be a good thing. There's a whole economy, but it should be a small, minor, yet noticeable improvement where it won't be considered broken. The problem with radar is that its range is too small. Pretty much it is exactly as your eyesight, so it's literally only shows what you can see. So again, I suggest opening up your map, and radar would show you the entire map. It would show you the monsters, it would show you the locations, it would show you the world boss. and all that other fancy jazz. Yeah, this one right here, Nanos. So October 11, 2018, Treasure find a boost odds of monster dropping boost potions or more. Snare lowers enemy attack. That's already been suggested. And attacking. Oh, I like how this guy right here has like the Halo emblems. I love that. Attacking sleep deals 25% extra damage. I definitely, with the stacking method, I can definitely see sleeping being a sort of boosting, and it would really make it incredibly meta. Let's go close that one right here. This one right here, this guy, Peppermint Daniel from January 26, 2019. So have it slow down attack speed as well. That way it doesn't get outclassed by stun and becomes a nice viable alternative. Yeah, that's already been talked about. So freedom passive. So make more enemies have stunning, snaring, and sleep effect ability. That is something that I talked about earlier. That way this ability becomes actually useful in its current state, and even enemies that do stun use attacks so seldom, so that this ability is never worth having. So I would recommend you just combine freedom and guard. So rather than protecting from boosts and stamina draining attacks, this ability could award players with extra boosts on each kill. Oh, yeah, that could actually does make sense. Maybe, yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree with that because, or there's two options. You can make the damage from battery drain much more significant, or you could use that ability so the player can have more potions and more weapon boosts, right? Especially weapon boosts, because they tend to drain out a lot faster. So Treasure Finder Radar. So yeah, these two abilities could simply be combined, possibly along with Reward and Scavenge. Interesting, which increase the number of taros and fusion matter earned from monsters respectively. I'm not sure if you should combine bonus as well as scavenge. I mean, by them individually, it's already a great power. Now, if you're to combine both of them, wow, that's just really nutty. So not only are you getting 24% more fusion matter, you can also get yourself 20% to 24% more taros as well. So like, let's just say like, you get like 1.5 million taros, right? Just add in an extra 20% from that. That's an easy 1.8 million. That's an easy 1.8 million. That's if what if you were to use Gumball the entire time? That's an easy 360,000 taros, right? So those small percentages, that's incredibly nutty. So you would be close to like 2 million taros by the time you're from level like 1 to 36 if you consistently use Gumball, Scavenge, and bonus as a combined power. If you just put it under just one ability, that's really nutty. So this one right here, I agree. So leech should do less damage and heal more, right? That does make sense, because like, why does leech do more damage and surprisingly enough doesn't heal you enough? It should give some damage and heals you more, and damage to just do more damage, obviously, because leech is just completely outclassed by damage. Damage is completely outclassed by leech. So let's go close that. So like many others here, I've been playing FusionFall since it first came out, and played it even more during its switch to free-to-play. Okay, so right here, the snare power problem. Before I continue, I would like to note that snare can be useful in certain situations. I'm not debating that. Heck, technically speaking, all nano powers are only useful in certain situations. So how snare works: when you activate snare on an enemy, it slows down the target's movement speed. That's it. That's all snare does. So what can we do to make snare cool? Why not make snare also slow down enemy attack speed? So while I think this would be a good way to improve snare, I still don't think it would really fix the big problem of why not just use stun. Oh yeah, right? Because if you were to use stun, then the character doesn't attack you at all. Then the attack speed is momentarily 0. So even if snare slows enemy attack speed, why would I use it instead of stunning the enemy where they won't attack at all? So certain groups might be useful, but I think we can figure out a better solution than this. So yeah, that's a good idea. So here's my suggestion. It's going to sound a little weird at first. I'm probably going to need a lot of coding on behalf of the devs, but I really think this will shake up the game in all the right ways. So my idea, make snare a racing power. Yes, I'm serious. Snare should not only be able to slow down monsters, but also snares should be able to be used to collect fusion pods during races. So I'm going to pretend that this is not my first time reading this. Yeah, so here's how it could work. Let's say you're in a situation where during a race, there is a fusion pod sitting in the air or some other tough to get place, and you aren't sure if you want to try it at risk and jumping over to it and rocketing back. So instead you use your snare nano to grab it from far. I really like how he actually uses images here, and this looks Photoshop, which likely is, but I like the effort that he put in here. You pull up your snare nano and a nano crosshair will target the fusion pods. Okay, so upon activation of the snare power, the spider web effect will show over the pod. The nano will play power activation, voice line and pose, and yeah, so it would be added to your total. So after all, the word snare literally means to trap or catch. So why not allow snare to catch fusion pods? Yeah, that definitely does make a lot of sense, right? Notice his two pods out of the way. Use the snare to grab both and save time. So reasons to make the change. So opening up new racing strategies. So let's face it, run, jump, and rocket are the best powers for running races. Sometimes recall can be useful in tricky infected zones, but overall, races don't really have a lot of variety. So imagine what kind of changes to the race meta could be done if you switch out one of the big three for snare. I would probably never swap out this. I would never swap out run for snare, but it's possible to swap out jumping with snare if that were to ever happen, because you know you can like if you have recall, then you would have run, rocket, and recall, but you would never remove run because that's how useful it is. You can't live without it, because it improves your scores by like 24% faster. So maybe moving a bit slower to have a chance of getting distant ones, or sacrificing high jumps for snare. After all, you still do have a rocket, or heck, maybe swap rocket for snare. You still got jump, and you just beat fusion well. You have these options for your new nano, but right now the unfortunate reality is that a few people are going to pick one of the snares instead of jump. Well, it's best power, all because they didn't know any better. Then if they try to do a race, they're at a disadvantage because they have no jump nano. They'll either wait to get a rocket nano or a different jump. Or, not really, at level 6, you don't really waste a lot of fusion matter. Okay. Gives hope for the forgotten nanos. So it's a bit of a running gag in FusionFall communities to diss on Double D for being arguably one of the worst nanos in the game. But I definitely like this idea a lot. I think I commented on this as well, right here. Yeah, I really like the idea of the nano power. However, you are very right in that this would require a ton of coding to accomplish. Honestly, I think the biggest issue is that racing pods are world objects, but you can only target entities like players, NPCs, mobs, etc. So it is a brilliant idea. However, just to repeat, like on the practical perspective, how can they make this happen? I mean, it's possible, but like, could they invest those hours elsewhere, right? Yeah, it's funny how often people combine Garden Freedom. We're almost done. Wow. Yeah. Increase RNG, and yeah. Oh wow, we're almost done, huh? So, um, so this nano thread right here, you know, some nanos need to be improved. Uh, just pay attention here. I've stated this before. Demongo needs to have a leech ability because you know Demongo has the ability to go steal souls. That's his primary ability. Samurai's Jack Rib Jump needs to be renamed to Jump Good because it's a running gag part of the show. Ed needs a better power, some form of grinding, racing, or leveling up power. And you know, like I gave my suggestion here, like there's actually a reason for Double D to actually have Rocket as an ability. And you know, so this is what Devin said. So we're gonna stray away from changing the powers outright of the original 36 nanos. With their setup, every single power is represented 3 times with all 3 nanotypes. We may be interested in changing some of the powers that don't really see use, but we like to keep everyone's powers intact. We'll also probably stick to the original designs for all the nanos, as there's not really a need to change them outside a couple of touch-ups here and there. We could iterate and iterate, but honestly, I would see that as a bit of a waste of time. So, down the hopes of Demongo having Leech or Samurai Jack having Jump Good as a name, but they could redesign the nano models some more. But as Devin stated, they could just use that time elsewhere. And yeah, and then he just says right here regarding the voice lines. Getting voice lines takes a very long time. So that's pretty much it. Wow. So I honestly did not expect this video to be an hour and a half long. I'm not exactly sure how I should edit this video, and it kind of makes me feel like should I just done a live stream instead. Yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, please subscribe, please check out the Discord server as well as the Universal Guide. The links are inside of the description. What are your thoughts on my thoughts? If you could change any nano's ability, what would it be? If you could introduce any new nano power, what would it be? If you could buff or debuff a nano power, how would you do it? Is your idea practical, right? So yeah, again, thank you for watching. This is Infinite Possibilities, and I will see you later. Bye.